So, hey everyone, happy Friday. Official intro coming soon. We're just chatting a little bit about the Bitcoin conference and all the craziness. I assume, I didn't specifically ask Nate, but I assume you weren't there.
Yeah, I skipped that. Had a couple people asking, but yeah, it's Bitcoin. Uh, Bitcoin's fallen a long way. So
Yeah.
even though Donald Trump was speaking, it wasn't enough of a draw for me.
Yeah, old teabag ain't enough. Yeah, it was funny though. It is funny to just see random, like I kind of like with Austin, where for consensus, random crypto people were just in random coffee places and other things like
Mm.
that around the city, and taking over the city effect was kind of interesting. I also heard that like Nashville is a relatively high crime place for some
Mm.
people, and I just definitely I'm not an idiot and I hide my conference badge, but I mean how many like tweaked out conference attendees are running around with their badge at 2 in the morning and just like how are they
Yeah,
not robbed?
yeah. Well, you saw the Ukrainian. I think there was a Ukrainian couple that got robbed for 3 Bitcoin by a mob of Russians in Thailand this week. Kind of,
I think I saw that.
yeah. There was that's all I saw about it. But $5 wrench attack.
Yeah, it's like and this is maybe my spicy take that will get me canceled. But I can one of the most recognizable crypto people in the world where I don't need them to tell me which coin they like are Monero people, ironically. It's just like the look like in fact, I
All
have
black, wearing a hooded sweatshirt.
yeah, and then just like the neck beard to the max, like the beard or whatever, and a weird ponytail or a fedora, a literal fedora, or they're just this is people are gonna hate me so much for this, but it's funny because a couple times I've been to a conference and then I've been like met some people IRL who I knew online, and I'm just like, hi, I'm the Monero, and I almost had to repress a laugh because I'm just like, well, of course you're the Monero guy. So
Like
like
I,
all that privacy, and if you stick out like a sore thumb, no one knows I have money. Yes, they do. Everyone knows. Yeah, so I might as well spray painted "I have Monero" on that big beard of yours.
yeah, yeah. I'd love to see that as a meme template, like the average X token holder or the average whichever crypto holder.
Yeah, because
Definitely recognizable tropes. I mean, Bitcoiners, like you can kind of tell when you go to a crypto conference
oh
who's a
yes,
Bitcoiner.
yes, that was actually another story at the conference, and I guess we'll do this, and then we'll actually go roll the intro and stuff. But uh, I was walking. I went to this donut shop that had coffee for the morning, and so I'm going walking in, and then just some random dude on the street smoking a cigarette. He's just like, "Hey, you're what's his face, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, why?" He's like, "Oh yeah, we interact on Twitter. It wasn't, we kind of an argument." And I'm like, and he said like, "What was it about?" And he was defending El Salvador's dictator. I'm like, that mother. Oh. And he was like, "Yeah, I agree with most of what you said. We have a couple disagreements, but yeah, you're cool. I respect you." All right, thanks, fine. And I'm like, first off, random maxi people and I talk a lot of smack on X, I really do, to that group of people, and just to be
Uh-huh.
randomly recognized on the street by one of them, it's like, oh no. But also, and if this gentleman is watching, I mean this with all the respect, but it definitely looks classic maximalist. There's for some reason Bitcoin maximalists have structurally unsound necks, just like really skinny neck. That's like, the Luke Dash Jr. kind of, Luke Jr. look or whatever, like that. Well, now he's kind of a chunkster these days, but like early Luke Jr. look, Adam Back look. It's just like, you know, Michael Saylor looks like a moistened chicken. Like all these people with these skinny necks. It just that's the Maxi calling card is the skinny neck.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I see it. There's a lot of. I mean, Bitcoin's fallen a long way, and so I'd say Bitcoin maximalists have kind of fallen along with them. The diaspora split everyone into their physiognomies in different coins.
Yeah, and as far as like talking smack about people's personal appearances and stuff, the I would say the average the average Bitcoiner, which is not the average Bitcoin maximalist. Those are very different things. The average Bitcoiner looks a lot less silly is maybe not the too unjust of a word, but they look like regular finance bros. The vest wearing because Bitcoiners like the Michael Saylor Bitcoiners, those people are just like regular finance kids.
Yeah.
Early mid-20s kids who just want money to go up, and that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, there have been like 5 or 6 phases of Bitcoiners, and we're at the most recent. They're and they have different thought leaders too, and you've seen kind of the progression of the level of intellectual who is propped up as a thought leader has just decreased over time steadily, and you see it most starkly in Bitcoin. Now you're at the finance bro level where Michael Saylor is the smartest person in Bitcoin.
Yeah, for sure. The Ethereans are, I would say, harder to pinpoint out, but those I've seen, they tend to be more on the what I would call the soy nerd side. Is in nerds, but like more likely to have multicolored hair and be on the left of the political spectrum kind of thing. But I can't see some dude on the street or some guy comes to a crypto meetup. I'm like, I can't do that with Ethereans. Solana people,
you can definitely tell Solana people, and there's like 5. So
I'm not good enough to be able to do that reliably yet, but I can talk to people who are in crypto, and if someone's just said, all right, pause, which of these guys is a Solana dude, I'd be able to figure that out after talking to them. I don't know what they look like yet, though. They're just anyone who's just an animal, like a degen, like YOLO chain. It's kind of what it is.
Yeah, I guess it is easier to tell after speaking to them. I feel like Solana people are more extroverted, a little more normal, a little less technical, and a little more normie.
Yeah, kind of like NFT people. Like the same vibe is, I guess, got transferred to Solanans.
Right, like technical NFT people.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. All right, let's hit this intro before people get bored and go away. All right, ready?
Good. We can keep the shit talking to your closest followers.
Absolutely. 3, 2, 1, go. So, hey everyone, legitimately, officially EatSleepCrypto-y. Happy Friday, guys. This is Digital Cash Rundown, episode 166. And yeah, I did skip last week because I was in Nashville for the conference, the Litecoin conference, but also kind of rolled into the Bitcoin conference. And yeah, I'm joined by the one and only Nate of EatSleepCrypto. How's it going, man?
Good, man. Glad to be here again. Always love being on your show.
Yeah, same. It's always a good time, and I do feel like you're kind of perfect for a lot of the subjects we're talking about today, because my crypto bubble tends to be a lot of people are into one coin or another, a lot of digital cash people and stuff like that. And while definitely that, the cypherpunk thing is definitely a group that I would definitely include you in. You're also have like a toe in the insanity, degen, multi-chain, leveraged, whatever the hell side of the thing. So it's instead of just being like, yeah, man, that's crazy, it's like you actually have some knowledge on this stuff. So that's why it's perfect. That's why it's perfect.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I always appreciate our shared interest in anti-maximalism, where I think both you and I are interested in what works and not what is profitable or only beneficial to our bags. And so yeah, definitely I'm keeping an eye on every part of crypto. Gotta be holistic with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, let me sort of straw man myself real quick before we get back into the other stuff. As a staunch anti-maxist myself, I have to say the anti-maxi crypto general space is the most wild and degen part of the space a little bit. Like the most crazy stuff you see are not from like all the Cardano people doing on their thing. It's just like just the people that are like, see, like Ken Bozak, right? And yeah, he's in that camp. So there you go.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
sure.
just that wild people, right? Wild fun people for sure.
Yeah, characters definitely.
Yeah. Well, let's just start diving in with this, and then let me go do my paid shill work here, to kick that thing off. So, Coin ATM Radar, right? They're very nice, and they sponsored my podcast, and I'm eternally grateful since they're probably not getting their money's worth, but they think they are. So that's all that matters. So this podcast is indeed sponsored by Coin ATM Radar. When you're buying crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place, and especially in Thailand if there's a bunch of Russians following you. And unlike an exchange which could freeze your account, Swan Bitcoin, be careful, don't rug people. You truly own all the crypto you buy. With Coin ATM Radar, you can find crypto ATMs and other services where you can buy or sell cryptos for cash. On their website, you can search by coin, address, if the ATM supports selling as well as buying, selling for people like me who don't have fiat. And you can also search by geo area, like country, state, city. You can also compare current fees from actual different ATMs. If you want to find more, coinatmradar.com, coinatmradar.com. And I will say that, it's wrong. Clicked it. There we go. I will say that I never pursued sponsors. They reached out to me for this, and so if I make them upset with me and lose it, I don't really care. But also, if you watch the Coin ATM Radar account on X, they are very spicy. And so all the shade I throw in the ad reads there to other things, probably not too worried about that, which is fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think one other benefit of Coin Radar, great website by the way, is the ATM is significantly less likely to be a Fed than your average counterparty.
I cannot even imagine a Fed operating an ATM.
Yeah, no, I think there are some there are easier ways for them to try to nab people, but use Coin Radar.
Yeah, so first of all, I do think that Feds first of all, I don't think people should break laws because it's inherently risky. So just be careful with that. Just not before anything. Second, I do think that people do get nabbed by the feds are sellers, not buyers. I don't think anyone ever gets arrested for buying crypto because it is legal to buy crypto. It's just that it's also legal to sell, but then there's some like the money transmitter stuff that they try to get you with, which is very vague and unclear. So it's more if you're a seller, you got to worry about the feds more. And finally, if I were trying to catch people, I would literally put a branded ATM that just said Fedbox and just said all the, and people would use it. And then like you make it so obvious that people would just have to use it and then actually get busted and just make sure that I could monetize the posts on social media about it, because that would be hilarious because everyone would jump on that. Fedbox turns out to be a Fedbox, nabs people.
I think about that a lot. Like there are like Milady derivatives that have like Fed or FBI on the hat. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Like if you're a Fed, what a great way to signal to other Feds than like actually just putting it in plain sight. And so whenever I see someone that has like some kind of like Fed joke about like, haha, I'm a Fed. I'm like, oh, okay, that's actually a Fed. I'm going to block that person on Twitter. Don't interact with these people. Because either way, it's like, it's not that funny, because you and I both have friends that are, that have been picked up and that are, in jail because of bullshit crimes, bullshit charges.
Four people who have
threatening
been
the
four of
regime.
my podcast guests either are or have been to prison for crypto stuff.
Yeah, it's insane. I hope to not be the fifth.
Well, that's why we conveniently leave out your name and stuff, and your location, and your milady hat.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
9/11. Never forget 9/11. That's
Nate
my milady hat.
it is showing us just how advanced those silicone masks can become these days. I actually don't know what he looks like in person. I've seen the cracks, but like,
I'm actually Joe Biden wearing a silicone mask.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
But it is funny, the whole Fed thing. I think if I do believe Feds exist. I do of course they do, but in terms of like in
crypto
trades and all that kind of stuff, I do believe that usually they're undetected by the average person, and I would consider myself the average person in this case. The people you think are Feds are almost always Fed bait, I think, which is almost as bad, because it's just like, it's not a shark, but it's a hunk of bloody meat in the ocean. It's just like, well, if you don't like sharks, you might as well stay the hell away from that hunk of bloody meat,
Yeah. For sure. Anyway, what topic did you want to pick up first? There's a lot that's gone on in crypto this week. It's been almost too much to keep track of.
Yeah, let's hit the Kujira thing.
Cool.
The Kuji announcement. So let's read some of this. So Kujira, here's from Team Kujira. Good morning. We'd all like to address the current events. As a team, we thought the best use of a portion of operations funds, would be to leverage and deploy across the ecosystem in order to bootstrap liquidity and activity. We genuinely felt like this was the correct course of action at the time. This unfortunately coincided with a series of events over the last few months, including exploits, socially engineered attacks, and fallouts within the ecosystem. This is in no way shifting blame, but it's important to note that at least gives a fuller picture. We worked hard to keep these positions safe, but the rate of selling made it impossible. Although this was by design by a select few, we, of course, take full responsibility for the position getting to this point, and we're truly sorry it affected the price, blah, 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 and it just talks about panic selling, other stuff like that. So, without knowing anything else, and I know we know a little bit more than that, but just from that, what's your hot take, just seeing a crypto team say that?
Yeah, I mean, at least they didn't try to cover it up, right? This is on the better end of PR responses from crypto teams that we've seen.
But still, I wonder if this is that guy I ran into at the Bitcoin conference. Like this level of, I don't know, like, have you ever leveraged ops funds?
No. Well, actually, I mean, technically, yes, but they're my own.
Well, yes,
so
but
like,
actually,
token dynamics will like put things into leveraged positions, but that's just because that doesn't affect anyone else.
So like a fund is one thing, but
right.
a ops fund, operations fund, meaning to like operate, to pay salaries, to do whatever else, you leverage the salary fund.
I am guilty of this, but it's like nothing that I couldn't afford to lose. But if I were, if this were a DAO or something like that, that's pretty bad. And the level of risk management there is, that's rough. Would not recommend treasuries be leveraging their funds, but it's. I mean, you get the intuition there, right? It's like, let's go super long on our bags because we want to support the ecosystem, increase the price, give people like a sense of confidence that we're really invested in what we're building. The flip side of that is if it goes wrong, people get wrecked even worse, right? Like there's always leverage unwinds even worse then it builds up, and the implications. I would expect the market effects of selling a leveraged or getting a leveraged position liquidated to outweigh the benefits of going leveraged long in the first place.
Yeah, I would agree. The leverage, like, it's just kind of eerily similar to the whole 2021 situation, where 2022, whenever the whole
Terra.
FTX, well, everything, everything. So, I'll get to Terra last because it's most relevant. Save the best for last. But like, it when Three Arrows Capital had their issues, it seems like
Yeah.
everyone got taken out. And it should not have been that systemic of a risk, but it was because so many people just had everything leveraged to the max, probably because you saw some of the ability for degens to make crazy gains with 5x leverage, this and that on DeFi. And then you had CeFi being like, we can't compete with our 2% interest. Let's, offer 8% or 15% or whatever the hell else, but like put ourselves in a bad position. And it's just crazy that like, Gemini got affected, and then you got, of course, Voyager went just exploded. And some people were touting Voyager as like the next Coinbase, like the Coinbase competitor. And then of course, I don't even think that I almost want to exclude FTX from this, because they were just such lunatics that like they would have, in the best of conditions, they would have lost their shirt. Like they just gambled everyone's money away. They screwed up so bad, but they were the source of systemic risk to then a bunch of other actors.
Yeah, a lot of contagion because of these centralized positions. But I think the important distinction is Kuji is like a decentralized project, right? And these positions were public, unlike FTX and Three Arrows. Like those things were uncovered later, and people had some intuitions about what they were doing. Some of those positions were announced, but I think one of the big differences here is that the Kuji sell was public, and so people could see in real time in the liquidation of this fund, of the ops treasury was public, so people can see that this is coming, and they can see exactly what's happening as a result. So that creates panic in real time in a different way than in TradFi or in CDFi or CFi in crypto.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. Now, let me just switch to this Kujira, or this tweet, or whatever. It says, I have the utmost empathy for people who suffer losses in Kujira. I can understand losses can occur. Experience myself in Terra. That's funny. Good time to provide larger context. So this person was apparently involved with Kuji, but then through the series of messages basically said, I want people to know I did try very hard to fight against this collapse, as it was always on the horizon. February, I raised the alarm. The sheer amount of ops. Kuji sat very close to the liquidation zone in hopes that they would be dealt with. In March, they came very close to the exact same scenario. And he says, at the same time, I decided to liquidate a small portion, blah, blah, blah. The ensuing reaction from my team and community was wholly unexpected from my side. The team told me liquidated Kuji was stolen, that I'd manipulated the entire scenario for profit. I'm against raising the alarm, blah, blah, blah. It says, I again raised the alarm on why they were risking collapse plus bad debt. And we're talking about like March here. As a result of this conversation, I was ostracized, spread as a bad actor, cut off from any form of technical support as a dev, and basically told I would be driven out of the ecosystem. And so that's kind of an interesting side, bit of evidence. Again, it's some dude on the internet talking about stuff I can't really confirm, but it does seem like this has been a problem for a long time. And the thing that a lot of people here don't, maybe not a lot of, most people probably listening don't know, is that Kuji is sort of like Luna 2.0, in that Terra Luna and that whole ecosystem went kaboom. I never heard much about the Terra Classic or whatever, any of those chains. I don't know what happened to them. I didn't keep up. But it does seem like Kuji is very similar to Terra Luna in its It's a Cosmos-based chain. It does a lot of the same thing, and that's the algo stable USK. Big difference being, as far as I know, they don't have a coin issuance. It's just like non-inflationary, but a lot of the same Luna community are in Kuji now, and so I know I've seen a lot of people, crying about being wrecked again with sympathy. I'm not saying this, be mean spirited, but they're lamenting that it's their second time that it happened to them. Like literally, they got cleaned out by Luna, and then they go to Luna 2.0, and then they get also cleaned out by that, and that's where things get a little, first off, sad for the people affected, but also a little bit like Luna was catastrophic, and then when you start to see like the warning signs that people knew along the way, and just YOLO, whatever, and then we see not only Kujira making some of, I wouldn't say the same mistakes, but similar attitudes towards fake it till you make it kind of thing, and let's just finance our own liquidity of our own projects here instead of waiting for it to be organic or something, and then warning signs that are ignored, and then the whole thing goes kaboom. And so that's, I'm not going to speak ill of Kuchi here. I will say that is a warning sign to not be involved with the project until you're sure that the people have learned their lessons thoroughly, or that the people who caused this are not running the project anymore. As long as that can still happen, I would not get anywhere near this. It's radioactive until the people that were this dumb with this historical context from just a couple years ago, and the same users, right? A lot of the same users, until those people have either fully learned their lesson or not part of the project. I think it's kind of radioactive. I don't know if you'd have a different take.
Yeah, I'd be a little more generous personally, just because I see some issues here that are common to other ecosystems. And we were talking earlier, there is a long tail of crypto projects, and there was kind of a diaspora after Bitcoin got co-opted, and then people ran to different ecosystems, and Kuji is part of Cosmos. And so there are some similarities in that, similarities to Terra. They're the same community that apparently haven't learned their lesson from Terra, but I would say one of those lessons that they need to learn is one that Ethereum and other ecosystems still haven't learned either, which is the understanding the leverage that you're putting on a token, or the we call this the tokenomic leverage. It's like the amount of dependence, the dependence on the token price for its own longevity, or its own, for the protocol's longevity. In this case, it was the DAO placing extra pressure on the token price through leverage on a lending market, on a lending protocol. And the issue with this is, like we just talked about, it's like the order books don't unwind the same way they stack up, and putting a lot of pressure on the token price to go up by going 2x long is going to put a lot of pressure on the way down, and maybe even more pressure, because people can see that there is a lot of Kuji waiting to dump if it gets liquidated. And so that sparks a wide-scale panic. But a couple things to flag here. One is the tokenomic leverage that's being put on the token, and the other is this concept of mark-to-market accounting that leads us to market cap is not really, it is something that I think DeFi has to get rid of entirely. This is a concept, market cap is a concept that's borrowed from TradFi that doesn't port over neatly to DeFi, because all of the positions are public. So you can see who has what position on a lending market and what the depth of liquidity is on various exchanges. You can look at an AMM, a liquidity pool, and see how much Kuji to USDC there is, or USK there is there. That and you can figure out, you can kind of like play Jenga and figure out how to collapse the tower. Like, where do we need to pull a block to make this thing fall, and then borrow Kuji and then sell it back later at a cheaper price after you've caused a death spiral. This is, this is a category of economic exploit that we're starting to see a little more frequently. It takes a large amount of capital, but there's a large return to be had in tanking the price of a token if you can borrow it and sell it back and pay it back later, buying it at a cheaper price. That's effectively shorting. This is not it's not a new type of economic exploit. This has happened several times in the Ethereum ecosystem. Even before that, there was a theory that BitMEX was counter trading their users by doing this and strategically liquidating positions to cause short squeezes or whatever kind of price movement they needed to profit. So I would say this is partly the fault of the people managing the treasury to do proper risk management. But I feel bad for users in that this is a lesson that a lot of users are having trouble learning across many ecosystems.
Yeah, it definitely is. The thing that I like that it is a lesson that can be learned, right? I like the open source financial system, right, where anyone can see everything, fully radically transparent, because then the code gets hardened, or or people, any human can just watch the whole ecosystem and analyze things, even just throw it into freaking ChatGPT or whatever, just say analyze the ecosystem and see what are the potential exploits and stuff, and then they can just say, oh, this is risky as fuck, I don't want to do this, I want to have only this, or I want to have only that, and then the individual gets to be not exposed to massive systemic collapses, even if the people who are responsible for those risks still being in place don't want to do anything about it. It's so contrast that with the legacy financial system, with all the financial collapses we've seen, and everyone just oh my gosh, everyone just gets wrecked, and they have no idea what happened, and then it's a post-mortem where they're wow, it turns out that this was shorting this and this was that, and it's just that's the best you can do, is just not trust it and have your gold bullion shotgun shells in the hills. There's just not much you could do. Whereas now, at least if you're smart, or you follow someone who is smart who's talking about this stuff, you can actually figure stuff out, because it's all out in the open. You can be these are the risks, then I can mitigate my risk, etc.
Yeah, I mean, this category of risk or category of vulnerability is economic rather than technical. And so we actually have a repo on GitHub that I'll post on my Twitter profile, official ESC, that where we keep track of these kinds of exploits. And we've seen probably 36 Oracle manipulation exploits that we've kept track of here. And this is sort of an example of that, right? It has to do with changing the apparent price of the token and causing a drastic drop or a drastic increase in the price of a token so that you can profit. So we have an entire list of these kinds of vulnerabilities. And you and I were talking about the DevCon talks, the application window closing soon. This is one that I applied to speak about at DevCon as the how to secure your DApp from economic exploits. This is the thing that Token Dynamics does best. All of our team are specializing in economic security. They're all trained on the entire history of exploits that we have in this list, and are pattern matching in the protocols that we see, and also uncovering novel exploits. But this is one of those things that it's on developers to understand how to prevent these exploits. It's on users to understand the protocols that they're using, precisely because there is nobody else looking for these kinds of exploits. These liquidity manipulation, Oracle manipulation exploits are out of scope for traditional auditors, because traditional auditors are focused on the technical vulnerabilities in a protocol. They're looking for reentrancy attacks, or that are replay attacks in UTXO systems. They're looking for technical vulnerabilities that are found in the code, where economic exploits are bugs in the incentives, if you want to put it that way. And so it's on users and it's on developers to understand the history of economic exploits for themselves. And that's what we focus on at Token Dynamics, and helping users and developers understand them.
Yeah, very nice. It's something that's definitely needed in the space, I think. And one thing's for sure, um, it's when I was talking about the whole maximalist type thing. If you're so much of a generalist, which sometimes you have to be in crypto, um, it's hard to get enough. There's too much of a deluge of information. And so, like for example, all the stuff I talked about analyzing the systemic risk in ecosystems. I barely know where to start with that for myself. So I mean, I keep things very simple and keep my mitigate my risk rather than pick a lot of low risk things because it's hard to tell what the risk is without a ton of research into every little thing. And it's just like, which project do I have to pay attention to? And I understand like the lure of Bitcoin only or something because you just have to study one thing and you can kind of figure it out. Unfortunately, the people who have done that, who don't know shit about Bitcoin, which is kind of ironic, but it is kind of scary out there. And some of the best, most knowledgeable people I know are experts in a few ecosystems, and that's it. So definitely having some professional help on that stuff would help. Well, speaking of professionals, let's call in the airstrike here. So JP Thor. So JP, the Thor Chain founder and very interesting person. He's, by the way, I interviewed him on this channel before, and I got to share. We did a podcast together at the conference in Nashville with some of the Bitcoin Cash people, IRL, which is fun. Anyway, he just says, help Team Kujira.eth. Team Kujira needs our help. Send non-exchange funds to this address to join my syndicate to help. I will start with 250K, maybe more. Terms, I will sign a SAFT 3-month cliff, 6-month vest. Discount to current price. I will handle the syndicate. I will refund if no SAFT closes. Min is 50K in stablecoins, USDC, USDT. Make my life easier. $10 syndicate fee. Moving fast, make it close fast. DM me for any questions. Help Kujira.eth and then the big address. So basically, from my understanding, he's kind of stepping in for like a bailout of Kujira to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's really it's wild. I would say noble. I'm curious what the ROI is on that for Thorchain. You know what that looks like. Thorchain was actually how I found. I think Maya was how I found Kuji, and so they have Kuji as a trading pair. It makes sense. There might be some economic incentive for them to do that, but in any case, really cool move by JP.
Yeah, I mean, I assume cool move. I mean, who knows if you have an individual profit motive there, but as far as I understand, it's just like an ecosystem benefit type thing where you're just trying to like make sure it all goes well. I didn't really know, as I mentioned about Maya, I didn't really know anything about Kujira until the Maya people were like, we're integrating Kuji after Dash. I'm like, oh, okay. And I just sort of look into it a little bit. I'm like, all right. And yeah, I mean, the Kuji pool's taking a big beating, obviously. But at the same time, it did end up generating a lot of swap volume for a little while. People in and out, arbing out pools, all this kind of stuff. It might have suppressed the cacao price a little bit. I can't quite tell. It wasn't like a massive pool anyway, but I mean, they did have quite a lot of which what's funny about the pools. The Kuji pool is like a 66% APR right now, probably because of just all the activity going through there as a result of this thing. So
yeah, I don't know if I'd want to take the other side of that as a liquidity provider. 60% on a depreciating asset can lead to a lot of impermanent loss.
Yeah, for sure. It is crazy. It reminds me of my good old friend who bought the dip of the USDC DPEG dip and made out like a bandit on it. And I'm just like, I know people that did that with Terra Luna too, and they did not make out like a bandit on it.
Yeah.
And, I was like, I just saw it went down like 40 some cents. UST did at least. And then it would bounce back up started to go back up. And it's like, oh yeah, this is an easy one. I'll just go throw, but then goes all the way down. So that's kind of a baller move. The thing is, I think that it's always like the higher the risk, the higher the reward always.
Right.
And all this like leverage stuff and all this other weird degen nonsense is seeking higher rewards. And which the thing is, the risk mitigation game is probably one of the most important games any human being can learn in life. And I can't think, there's just so many understanding risk. And then also, so first off, understanding risk, because there's a lot of risks that just aren't worth it. Like, for example, riding on one of those Lime scooters or whatever. I mean, the people get seriously injured and die from those. And the convenience trade-off is just like not that great. Like, what the hell? It's just not that great. You hit a little rock, you go flying, you die. Like, so I'd go on a bike in Amsterdam where like no one ever takes a spill pretty much, or a tourist once in a while. I mean, that's fine because convenience, fitness, etc. And I'm not going to die. I'm going to maybe fall over and skin myself. But like the scooter, no. But as far as like risk mitigation, like when they tell you about, in combat sports and stuff, like these are the rules. Like always keep your hands up. Don't and like never let the opponent, never expose your back to your opponent in grappling, and like all these other rules. The way you get the most success is by ignoring the rules, but selectively. Like you understand the risk you're taking by having your hands down, so that when someone punches you, you go counter punch, whatever it is, whatever the move is, or you expose your back as a way to get up to your feet, understanding the risks for someone to take your back and just be watching out for those risks, understanding the vulnerability you're exposing yourself to. And it's very similar with like all this like leverage craziness. Like when my friend bought the USDC dip, I think he had an intimate enough knowledge of the ecosystem and everything to know, listen, 99% USDC is going to be completely fine. So this is almost entirely free money. It is risky, but I'm not going to do it so I can't feed my family. I'm going to do a big chunk though, and I understand that the actual risk that this all gets wasted is very low, even though it seems really risky, because I understand this risk very well. Boom, and he makes a bunch of money just like that. And so same thing with like, if you see some opportunity in the Kuji ecosystem, this is the time to ape in, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little more. I see a little more nuance as someone who is a very conservative crypto investor, which means I still ape meme coins when I laugh and find them funny. I
know someone who lost a ton of money on Horan.
Dude,
Elizabeth Horan token.
Yeah, I lost a lot of money on Politify. The Joe Biden was not the best of investments. No, I mean, that's like the risk to reward, right? But I think in the case of the USDC DPEG, all you really need is a slight edge to make a trade like that beneficial, because if the market is calculating a risk greater than what you would calculate it at, then there's a difference there that you can capitalize on. If you leverage long borrow USDC with USDT, you can loop that like 50 times and get 400% ROI if you are correct about that 8-cent DPEG being temporary, or it's still positive expected value in your favor if you believe there's a 6% risk and it's an 8-cent DPEG, and I'm doing quick math here, but you could arb that 2% perceived risk spread and capitalize on that over time by making those kinds of bets that are positive expected value for yourself. But it requires, to your point, and I love the martial arts analogies, it requires a thorough understanding of what those risks are, right? Because if you turn your back to your opponent grappling, you might catch them off guard because they're like, no one ever turns their back. A seasoned grappler will never do that unless they're trying to quickly turn their back and then cover their neck and then grab your hand
Hmm.
as you're going for a choke or something and turning that into an escape, right? Um, but yeah, so it requires a thorough understanding of the risks. But definitely, that's what makes crypto interesting, right? There's always risk, and therefore there's always a lot of reward, or there's always, there are rewards to be had
Potential, yeah.
that come with risks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy because a lot of it you do get the opportunity to take a lot of more risks if you minimize vulnerabilities to yourself. And so, for example, it hasn't been a financially profitable risk, but a huge risk I took was deciding to only live on crypto in 2015. It's not a smart move. And close my bank account the following year. It's not a smart move, but it's not. I did it knowing that I had, like, I could make it on like a grand a month, and I knew enough crazy local libertarian people who are, even if no one, like, who would bail me out, like if I couldn't find something, like, hey, can I just pay you these bitcoins and then you can buy this for me, like I knew I was in a good enough position to just make it work even in the
Yeah.
worst case. And it ended up working out great for me in, not financially, but in terms of, like, my life. It all worked out, gave me a career, gave me a bunch of fun stuff to do, and the rest is history, as they say. But it's kind of on the flip side of things. It's crazy how leveraged the average fiat slave is, and I don't think that's fully discussed enough, right? Because, oh, crypto's so risky. It's like, yeah, but you have you have a mortgage or a rent payment that's like high. You have a car payment. You got like a freaking birthday present payment now. Like, people are leveraged to the max, and then all it takes is one, like, whoops, I couldn't get access to my bank account for this, or I needed to pay, or accidentally got scammed and like had to pay a fake ransom to someone, and then all of a sudden, just the dominoes, you just lose everything. You just get completely destroyed. Like, and
Yeah.
I am happy to be in a position where, bills are relatively minimal, and it's also like, it's like there's unexpected things decrease the available funding. Like, there's money, I gotta like sell, I gotta spend to this, I gotta do whatever. The stack, even though it's not a very big stack, is like, you just chop at it if bad things happen. It's not like I just got this little padding that one chop just destroys real things in my life. And so I think that a lot of people could be better off if they could deleverage their own lives and be able to take on a little more financial risk for some or financial or freedom gains.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can't put a price on freedom or integrity, and I agree with you that people tend to underprice the risk of the financial system. Like, I found out a couple of years ago, the FDIC has 99 years to pay out on its insurance obligations. So your money is insured
Damn.
up to $250,000 in most banks, but they can take up almost 100 years to pay that back. And by that time, the dollar is going to be worthless. So it's like, there are hidden risks in the fine print of the traditional financial system that people don't often price in.
Yeah, and it is interesting to see. Just like I was chatting with, not just, but not too long ago, chatting with a buddy of mine who used to live in Venezuela during the lead up to their whole issues, and basically, he said a lot of smart people started taking out the most ridiculous amounts of debt possible, and because they just knew that by the time they was payable, like they had to pay anything back, that the inflation rate would well outpace the interest rate, and they would. It's kind of like taking free money at that point, and
Yeah.
so it's like the same thing of like, I kind of changed my mind a little bit before, because when I was younger, I was much more of like a Dave Ramsey like mindset of like, oh, no debt, any debt is bad, and now I still try to be not leveraged, but something like a mortgage is like shorting the crap out of the dollar. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I mean, that's a bet. It's a low risk bet. I think it's like
Yeah.
maybe there are years it doesn't pan out, but on the macro scale, like as I pointed out to people, and people say about like Bitcoin, oh, new all time high. It's like not yet. 79K is the new all time high in purchasing power in 2021 dollars because of how bad inflation was. And so, yeah, I'm willing to bet that nonsense is going to keep happening.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a solid bet. Especially with when the alternative is buying Bitcoin, like when the alternative to dollars is buying a hard asset like real estate or crypto. It can make sense, I think, to take on some debt to do that.
Yeah, but again, manageable debt, because if you find yourself in a position where you can't make payments and you get foreclosed on or whatever, that's no good. You're not shorting the dollar anymore. You're just getting wrecked. So
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
So last little Kuji post over here. Let me just put on that one. It says, "Hi folks, you don't want to post for the sake of posting, but just to let everyone know, we've been working through last night and today to sort the following. 1, plan to cover the debt. Will involve partnerships that we believe will be exciting for Kujira moving forward. 2, the complete open sourcing of Kujira systems, which will result in much more collaboration, fewer bottlenecks, funding opportunities, and more." Which is, that for me was the first red flag I ever heard about Kujira, was that there were some not open source elements in the ecosystem. And I'm not, bright enough to know, or I'm not researched enough to know exactly what they were, but something related to contracts, like smart contracts weren't necessarily all open source or something like that. Don't quote me on that. Look it up. But again, complete open sourcing, that should have been step 1, like years ago. But anyway, number 3, moving all infra to fully decentralized providers. Number 4, systems that will be put in place to not allow this to happen again, as well as how the founding team fits into decision making going forward. And apologize for this big bump in the road, blah blah blah. Yeah, so it sounds like they're moving on from lessons, I guess. I feel like that's good, but I'm still like, let's wait. Let me see what happens. I guess if JP, who's a crazy chaotic person, sure, but like clearly knows what he's doing. If he feels like this is a good idea, then he sees some sort of benefit to the Kuji ecosystem persisting, and not just, it should collapse. Like as far as like the market, free market, as far as like natural selection and stuff, like this is it. You got the lion caught you. This is it. You gotta go away. But the fact of like, no, let's save him right here, means that people smarter than me probably think it's a good idea. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope Kuji sticks around, because it really, from what I've seen, it's a great premise. My understanding of the Kuji ecosystem and Kuji chain is governance has to approve the smart contracts that launch on it, and that's a really awesome experiment. And I was hoping to see more of that. I hope they're able to recover. I'm not sure if they're able to prevent this kind of thing entirely in the future. Certainly, like at the superficial level of treasury management by the DAO, like they shouldn't be aping their operations funds into risky positions, and that is avoidable. But this could just have easily been a Kuji whale that had a public position on Ghost, or the lending market, which I think is called Ghost. I know they have a token, Ghost. But this could have just as easily been a large Kuji whale who got liquidated, and then that liquidation may have caused some bad debt to the lending market, a death spiral in the exact same way. And then an operations fund that's holding Kuji spot would have been wrecked, like just the same. It might have been, maybe half the operations fund's value was lost, or more, from the Kuji token taking such a hit. So to fully prevent this, you actually need to redesign crypto or DeFi in a chain from the ground up. And we can go into this a little bit, but I saw a post. Tarun was talking about like deterministic interoperable cryptography or some. I don't follow most of the things Tarun says until I look up 6 or 7 definitions. But once I do, it's like, oh yeah, well, that's common sense. That's pretty straightforward. But he was talking about, maybe a way to do crypto is to have everything be built to a certain spec where it's all interoperable. And what that would look like from an economic security perspective would be like checks on whether there's enough liquidity to handle a liquidation without dropping the price, or checks on like whether an oracle is economically secure or can be bought off or manipulated in some way. These things are probably this kind of ecosystem. I don't think will start to rise until the next cycle. This might be like 5 years out, but I would love to start seeing to see people trying to solve some of these economic incentive problems that gave rise to the Kujira exploit and have given rise to many other exploits in the past.
Yeah, for sure. It's I got a few things, a few kind of examples of that. So I think a lot of you're right that this does need to be a little bit more systemic, a little bit more, in depth as far as really solving the problem. But I think that some mitigations of best practices are just super make sense. So, like, for example, in 2021, I believe, the Dash community got a lot of overtures from Thorchain, a lot of sort of promises. I wouldn't say promises, but like, virtual, almost promises to integrate and stuff. And as part of that was like, okay, well, we probably need a lot of liquidity to jumpstart the pool. So the Dash Investment Foundation got a big chunk of Rune in order to kickstart that liquidity. That never ended up working out, so the Rune ended up getting swapped to Cacao at a later date to help jumpstart the pool on the Maya protocol. But the point is, like, that's like playing with DeFi, with like liquidity stuff, but it was not operational funds for any teams. It was one investment from an investment entity that operated in this way in order to it's basically almost like a buying and integrate. It's almost like investing in a company where you buy like shares or whatever. And no one should buy shares in a company with operational funds, right? That's insane. And as far as I know, like, mostly that doesn't happen, right? Your operational budget is this. An investment could go to zero, but could also return, and we're playing that game now. And on the longer term, it is kind of funny because now that I think about it, there was I would say it's unavoidable, sort of a liquidation event that happened in the Dash ecosystem a couple of years ago that I really think depressed the price up until today. Like, as far as it like really caused stuff to be kind of where it is today. It was like 2019 or so, 2020 or somewhere 2019, I'm pretty sure. There were some original Dash holders who just got convinced to buy in spectacularly at like 4 cents a coin or something insane like that, right? And or gifted it. I'm not exactly sure. And they were not very non-technical people, and basically put this up on Salt. Remember Salt lending from back in the day? And basically just threw like a non-trivial percentage of the entire coin supply onto Salt so that they could then cash it out and basically spend off of it. Basically couldn't figure out how to like liquidate it for selling purposes or whatever. And we're just doing that. And then at some point the price went low enough to where they were going to be liquidated if they didn't do anything about it, and they were not in a position to do anything about it. And then there was just like a mass liquidation event that just caused like a death candle kind of thing. And I remember those days. It was pretty crazy. And so, but the thing is, that was an external risk. You cannot prevent random people from buying a bunch of coins and doing dumb shit with it. And that will always be a sort of a risk. But the real thing is, like with this, to sort of loop it back around to Kuji, that was, it was like the actual project took on this kind of a risk, which is like you can't. Just crazy dummies who could just pop up and do weird stuff in the ecosystem, but the fact that the team itself was doing that was like, oh gosh.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it speaks to a level of professionalism for sure. The alternative is tough, which is like hiring someone with that expertise. And there are professional treasury managers out there, and market makers who charge an arm and a leg, and lots of unsavory companies will prevent you from mismanaging treasury funds, but they're also expensive and, from what I've heard, difficult to work with. The on the Dash topic, a similar thing actually happened. Similar thing happened in Ethereum last year with Aave. There was a token, Curve, CRV token. The founder
Curved
deposited
everyone.
I mean, I could go on about Curve, but a lot of news revolves around Curve in the Ethereum ecosystem, and Aave for that matter. Not all bad, but so the Curve founder deposited something like $100 million in Curve and took out a $50 million loan against it, and then it got liquidated or got close to liquidation, and it was a whole issue because the founder didn't want to pay back that loan. Ended up paying it back and making sure there was no bad debt in the protocol. But had he been anonymous, there would have been no incentive for him to actually do that. So there was a bit of social protection there, but it shows that the same kind of exploit happened in Dash several years ago. People haven't learned their lesson, and I attribute that to a lack of understanding and the lack of terminology around these kinds of exploits. But now that we're pinning down and defining this type of exploit as a common category, I'm expecting and hoping to see people avoiding these kinds of things in the past, in the future.
I mean, one thing for sure. We even go to like the most sacred, supposedly, of everything, which is BTC itself. And Satoshi and Sailor are both systemic risks, kind of. Not
Yeah.
obviously, it would be like a big dumperoo. Everyone would be sad for a while, and then the price would bounce back. Like it wouldn't be like destroyed, but it would. So if Sailor decided to, so first off, a lot of these maxi folks I like to call Sailor's exit liquidity, because he was not really into crypto ever, and then all of a sudden he got super maxi, and I'm buying Bitcoin, all this kind of stuff, and then people buying his stock and all kind of weird stuff. One sec. Nuss something up my nose, but it yeah, it got pretty. If he decided to just sell, because at some point there is a peak, at some point there's a ceiling to the Bitcoin growth curve, and if he just sees something else he wants to do with it, or he just, whatever else, he could absolutely wreck everyone. In fact, if Sailor just wanted to, like, if he could find a way to talk his way out of it, he could absolutely sell every last coin he has, tank the price, cause a giant cascade of selling, and then quietly OTC buy it all back in, and then come back with some public I'm buying, and then pump it, like, it just double his hoard. Like, it sounds, it's a little sad to say that, but he could probably do that. Now,
Yeah,
Satoshi's
totally.
hoard is like, that mofo better be dead or have his keys lost, because that is a scary thing. Like, what happens if, kind of like Tether it used to be. I don't think it's systemic anymore to where it destroy everything, but like a few years ago, 2019 or so, that would have been really bad. But like if someone took those coins and sold them all, I think it would cause permanent or long-term damage to the crypto ecosystem, because it's the
Yeah.
combination of selling of massive amount of value, of the harming of the Satoshi Anon ethos, and also it would as far as like, no, it's this pristine thing. It just, everything's pristine. It's like not anymore if the guy's back. Like if in even worse if it's Craig Wright, but I'll just leave that one to and
Yeah,
just
don't
say
encourage them.
like anyway. And then but then the thing is like some founder or whatever with the founder of the entire ecosystem getting out would, even if you bought Ethereum or you bought like Monero or something else with it, who cares? It's just the founder getting out of the original coin just caused so much havoc. And like, unfortunately, this systemic risk has existed. I mean, when did Satoshi stop mining? Was it like 2010 or something?
2011. Yeah,
Yeah.
might have been 2010.
So for 12, 13 years straight, we've had this giant systemic risk that has gotten less systemic. This is the best it's ever been, and it's still there. And it's like, damn.
Yeah, I mean the thing like with Sailor and Satoshi, well, there's a couple things with Satoshi. Like if the coins even move, then it's a whole issue. If like some of the coins move, right, then everybody sells and you have a mass panic. Again, argument against transparency on blockchains, but I know we've talked about this a lot in the past. But and with Satoshi though, what he could do, what founders have been doing, like this guy Mitch from Curve, is borrowing against it. And there are ways to, in that way, you kind of make it someone else's problem, because if you, it's like that old trope: if you owe the bank $1 million, you have a problem. But if you owe the bank $1 billion, the bank has a problem.
Yeah.
And that's a function of it's speaking to the depth of liquidity in the market. And so I actually don't think 1 million Bitcoin on the market would be like that catastrophic. It would definitely hurt the image of Satoshi as this ethereal, benevolent anon that is no longer with us in the project or in the world or whatever. Sailor might be a different case, but there's all sorts of tricks that Sailor could pull. Right now he's just he's selling. He could sell MicroStrategy, and MicroStrategy has the Bitcoin, and that way he gets his exit. He could buy Bitcoin personally before announcing MicroStrategy is acquiring Bitcoin. There are a lot of tricks that he can pull to do this kind of thing, but I'd expect for Satoshi or for Bitcoiners in the near future, there's going to be a bit more liquidity in what's called BTC-Fi. It's like DeFi being built on Bitcoin layer 2s and some even on chain. That kind of thing is an exit avenue for Bitcoiners as well, who might not be selling nominally, but they're creating a stable coin or borrowing against it, borrowing some other asset, or porting it over to the Ethereum ecosystem and using it there through like a wrapped BTC or a TBTC threshold network. So there are different ways to sort of offload an exit without actually selling, and that makes it tricky because the trail gets obscured a little bit. So the average person who is exit liquidity isn't quite able to follow the complexity of all the financial trickery that's going on, and you end up with these kind of leveraged events like in Kujira, because even though things are completely transparent, the kind of people that are looking at that are the attackers. They're not the average user that's trying to stay safe. And so that's why I'd say DeFi needs to be like fundamentally reoriented around these systemic risks and economic incentive misalignments.
Yeah. It just speaking of like systemic and crashes and stuff. So, on like a few days ago, actually on the 30th, so that was like 4 days ago, Kujira was trading at over a cent or over $1. And then yesterday, let's see how far we go yesterday. Yesterday it got down to like 50 cents. 52 cents, kind of, right? And right now it's 45 cents. It recovered from a kind of low of like 31 cents today, although there was a flash crash that you see in this chart here that goes all the way down to 25 cents. And damn, like, can you imagine being that person who has like their life savings or a big chunk in Kuji, and you just get overnight whacked in half, and then you see it go down to 25 cents, and you just soil your shorts at that point. You're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. To answer your question, I can't imagine my net worth being cut in half overnight. That's it's like crypto. I feel like all of us in crypto have seen that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like we were around in 2017 when Bitcoin dropped from 20,000 to 12 in a day.
Was that a day? Wow.
It might have been like 19.5 to 18, and then but I vividly remember watching the chart on Friends TV and just being like, oh my God, this is terrible. It was like the end of the world just watching it drop. At some point we started rooting for it to go even lower. We're just like, yeah, it's over. Just fun. Keep going. But yeah, that's crypto, right?
The wreckedness. Hey, let's hit on this compound governance attack thing, because I don't know anything about this.
Yeah, so I'll give a quick recap.
Says, by the way, there's no reason to believe the compound governance attack is over. Once executed, they'll have double the voting power, over 10% of the supply, which would basically, I would have won them every vote ever in this DAO. So what is he talking about?
Yeah, so Compound is one of the oldest, I think it's the oldest lending market in crypto. It's either the oldest or the second oldest to Aave. And a lot of DAOs are based on it. A lot of lending protocols are based on it. And they had a governance exploit where an attacker, or, he might not be an attacker. He might have just been a DAO member. And from a blockchain's perspective, it's really hard to tell the difference, because this guy accumulated a bunch of votes to push a proposal through where he voted with 6% of the total supply. But because all of the other voting members of the DAO, the token holders, didn't vote, he was able to pass this proposal that awarded him and his friends an additional 5% of the token supply, effectively giving them complete control of Compound, which secures $1.5 billion in TVL. So he was able to do this with an initial investment of about $30 million. He got a bunch of token holders to delegate or to vote for this, and he was investing a few $1 million himself, and pushed this proposal through that was aimed at distributing governance rewards to, or the treasury rewards to, the governance token holders. And so this has been a point of contention for a while in a lot of DAOs. There's this trope of a pure governance token that doesn't actually give the token holders the rights to any of the revenues of the protocol, but nonetheless is responsible for, in some ways, accruing those revenues, generating those revenues by making proper governance decisions. And what this has led to is voter apathy, where people are not rewarded for voting. They're not penalized for not voting or for voting the wrong way. There's no real incentive one way or the other. There's just a sort of a loose correlation between token price and protocol utility. And so this particular exploiter or DAO member, Humpty, named, it managed to push this proposal through, and the DAO was scrambling for a few days trying to renegotiate and trying to get him to cancel this proposal. And they actually ended up successfully doing that. I think yesterday or 2 days ago, they announced that he would cancel the proposal. I think he got some number of governance tokens, and he became an official delegate. So people are delegating their votes to him, so he has a little more control over the DAO. And they're looking to distribute governance token rewards or governance rewards to voters in the future and to token holders in the future. So there is there's been a good resolution for Compound DAO to this saga. This has been going on for like 3 months. Initially, he proposed something similar, sort of like testing the waters for this kind of thing. Dr. Nick and I had a space earlier this week, and he pointed out that you could put forward test proposals like this one to find out how many votes you would need to actually get the proposal through, and then come back later, propose the same thing, which is apparently what he did, and then push through these push this proposal through because you know exactly how many votes are going to show up to vote against it. So that's more or less what happened. But yeah, initial investment of 25 million total, or 30 million total, got him an extra 25 million in tokens, and it's virtually risk free, right? Because if the
Oh, where we
proposal fails,
heard
you
that
can just sell
before.
your tokens back. Yeah,
Basically
yeah.
risk free. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
Hmm.
there are these Mango Markets was a economic exploit that I won't go into, but
Hmm.
the executor of that exploit called it a highly profitable trading strategy. And these economic exploits are
They're not
functionally
wrong.
like, yeah, it's not wrong. It's like, actually, these are arbitrage. These are just large arbitrages. They're intra-block arbitrages.
Hmm.
Um, and so this governance exploit is another example of these large arbitrage opportunities. And when I say it's risk free, I mean it virtually is. It just has a large capital requirement, and there's some legal gray area around it. So the risk is less financial and I guess more operational. But
Yeah.
that's what happened with Compound this week.
So did the compound, the actual product, the actual tokens that they have, did they take it a hit?
That's the funny thing. They didn't really. They took a small hit, but even they're yeah, like Nick said a couple of days ago, the attack was ongoing, and so was the
Hmm.
defense, right? So there were people negotiating and talking with Humpty and the Golden Boys, his crew that delegated their votes or used their votes to vote for this. Um, and so they were able to come to a resolution. The token price didn't take a massive hit in the process. And part of that, though, I think, is that the same people who were not voting for or against this proposal, the 90% of comp token holders that weren't a part of this, this saga, were also not in a position to dump the tokens. They're uh, away from keyboard. They're asleep at the wheel, right? They're not actually doing anything one way or another. So there's nobody really to sell. But it is always interesting, and that was something Nick and I remarked on in the Token Dynamics Twitter space earlier this week. It's like, it's always interesting because when the worst things happen, a lot of the time the price does nothing. Solana goes down for a day, and the price does absolutely nothing at all. So it's funny how you see that happening, and that's one of the reasons that I suggested this may have been like a relatively risk-free attack.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy also because like is the voting dynamics of this kind of stuff. It's very similar to politics, actually. And it's kind of funny because I've been in the DAO, mostly one DAO, but the DAO world for 8 years now, I guess, right? And I've been sort of loosely involved in politics. The misses in politics, like all that stuff. I see like the voting dynamics. It's not. It's turnout of single issue voters that really swing, that make the difference. Because you're pretty gridlocked as far as like raw numbers of like people who will vote or care about an issue. And first of all, each side is always fighting for who of their base, which one can they energize more to actually go out and vote as opposed to like not vote. But then it's always when you get something out there, like that's why the crypto vote is like everyone's, it's not that there's a lot of people who are trying to vote a single issue on crypto, but there's plenty enough to swing an election that's close, right? To knock a few states in the other way, and there you go. And with the DAO kind of stuff is very interesting. And like the Dash DAO has been around almost 10 years at this point. It's been a DAO almost 10 years. And there's the dynamics are very interesting because it's a very low voter turnout for the most part, but sometimes you get a massive change in turnout if it's something very important. And I know people in particular, some people would vote for or against something, and they play all these kinds of games because the voting deadline, right? And so during the entire cycle, you can vote, and then you can change your vote at any time, and it's just the vote totals when the deadline is there. And I know some people who would vote strategically against a proposal they wanted to pass or for it. You would vote kind of opposite, and then to lure the other side into a sense of complacency, and then flip their votes last minute to
Wow.
change the event. Do stuff like that. I know some people who like would have to lobby for votes behind the scenes, be like, hey, and not lobby for people who had already voted, like lobby other people. Hey, can you become active this cycle? And and then deals and negotiations. And the one deal I remember very vividly, because mostly it just proposals go through. As far as I was able to tell, most proposals, even ones that had some shenanigans on them, ended up being pretty representative of the will of the South, as I could feel it. Even when they personally wrecked me with a proposal, I'm just like, and there was manipulation, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I can see it. But then in 2022, Ryan Taylor, who used to head up the Dash Core team, he had some unpopular things happen, and then basically for the first time in the entire the core development team was at serious risk of being defunded for the first time ever. And it was not overwhelming, but there was enough people who were like, this guy's going to tank the project if we don't get rid of him, kind of thing. And there's enough lobbying of people who might not be first language of English and stuff like that, and just people who are just a little bit like, a lot of legwork was done behind the scenes to really make sure that it was in that position. And then he agreed to resign, and as soon as he resigned, like a massive amount of votes flipped and they got funded. It's just like,
wow.
So it's like literally get this guy out of here. And then when he resigned, boom, it's like the same people just flipped it, and then there you go. So I've seen these like DAO dynamics, and I do know a lot of people strategically don't always vote, even when they're watching proposals very closely, because they don't want to show their hand. They don't want to be like, these are the votes, these are not, this is how many you have to get. They keep a couple in the chamber. It's like very common actually in the Dash DAO to have people keep a couple in the chamber. Like, I'm not going to vote on this one. It's passing. I don't need to vote, and then just watch and only vote if they need to. So the whole voting test, it's kind of like hash rate too with hash wars, because with the Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV chain,
that's exactly the one I thought of.
A bunch of hash rate just showed up out of nowhere to just fight it. And I'm like, where did this come from? It's been there all along. That's the thing.
Right.
And a lot of people, like, the cost to attack the network, especially Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has the most mining machines, the most infra, the most everything, the most general interest from outside of the Bitcoin community. Bitcoin's hash rate could probably, I don't know, maybe I'm being stupid by saying this, but maybe quintuple overnight if it needed to. And so if someone decided to attack the network and it was a systemic risk kind of a thing, like a nation state or something, I think that there would be a bunch of hash rate show up out of freaking nowhere to come and change it. And we don't know how much that hash rate is.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I even just made a note to add the hash war to the list of economic exploits, because in a way it's like unintentional. Like, had that hash war actually been legitimate, I don't know if you remember, but they checkpointed it. ABC checkpointed before the hash war actually went through, and then Roger came online with all of that. Like, it was like it was like 10x the hash and just obliterated the SV chain. That was my favorite moment of being part of the Bitcoin Cash community, actually. But that's like kind of a type of exploit, right? You can imagine that, we're talking about the same type of exploit happening with withholding votes in a DAO in governance. And so these are kinds of non-technical exploits. They're game theory, based on game theory, that are happening in crypto because designs are not aligning, protocol designers are not aligning the incentives of users, of each group of users in the
Yeah,
protocol.
and like the user experience too, because I know a lot of people in the Dash world at least do not vote um, from they leave their keys at home, their voting keys on like their home computer or whatever. So when they're on vacation or whatever, then they can't access those, or they, and they, I'm sure there's ways of doing that. There's ways to improve that old creaky old DAO, but like, for example, if you can do multi-month proposals, which of course just sort of like in one go put in multi-months worth of the same proposal, but it can still be downvoted at any month, right? So it's not like it's you get it in and it's in, but practically speaking, it is more in and it's in. But I have noticed that over the holiday season is a terrible time to submit a proposal, and I explicitly do not do this because, or if I do it like the very first day the voting window opens, and then actively lobby some people from the get-go. Oh, remember to vote before you go to Christmas break or whatever, because people won't. They'll be busy with real life, and then a proposal that has pretty overwhelming support can actually fail because the haters don't have families and Christmases. I've noticed, like it's. I mean, it is true. Like the kind of like those sorts of people they're always there, and they will jump on a moment of weakness like that to defund a proposal they don't like. And so, yeah, it's just all these, I'm sure it'd be slightly mitigated if you had like easy one-click mobile voting and you had like a push notification go to your phone that said like, this proposal you care about is not in funding zone. What do you like, bing on your phone? That would help. But at the same time, you can't completely mitigate for like those human factors.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are definitely things you can do to like around the protocol to change the game theory of it. And this is a topic that we probably won't get into today, and I'm still fleshing out. But the idea of a parasitic protocol, like you can build protocols around other protocols that change the incentives of the underlying. So, for example, a positive example of this was convex to curve. So back in 2022, we had the Curve Wars, which was people trying to accumulate voting power in Curve. And this one group came along, developed a protocol called Convex that locks up everybody's Curve automatically and directs the rewards where it votes, rather than having individual Curve holders voting for where liquidity or rewards and therefore liquidity is moving on Curve. The one group, Convex, the protocol, was choosing where it should go and then auto compounding the returns they were getting to accumulate more voting power. And they ultimately won the Curve Wars of 2022. But that's an example where Curve built a protocol. It was designed to work a certain way, which was individuals voting for things and then having a clunky user experience, and getting the opportunity to re-up and choose where their rewards go when they where their voting power goes when they get more rewards. Convex streamlined that whole thing. And in this case, it was probably a net positive for Curve, but there are other examples where protocols built on top of another are not necessarily beneficial to the underlying protocol. So Ethereum has had a couple controversies this past year. One of those is Lido is the primary liquid staking platform on Ethereum, and they have almost reached 33%. They might have breached 33% of the staked Ethereum of the validator set this year. And the issue with that is they can kind of halt parts of consensus. And so there are systemic risks to Ethereum that have come from the market fairly choosing an exogenous protocol and directing their ETH staking yields, channeling their ETH staking yields through Lido, or choosing Lido as that operator to earn them the most money. Another example is Eigenlayer that has restaking. And so people are finally starting to talk about, I had a short tweet thread earlier this week about the risks of Eigenlayer restaking. People are finally starting to talk about how Eigenlayer is, a potentially dangerous protocol for Ethereum. There are a lot of economic risks to it. But at the same time, there's no real way to stop Eigenlayer from causing systemic risk to Ethereum. And there's a large profit incentive for people to be using Eigenlayer. You can earn way more money restaking your ETH than you can staking it just one time. But the cost is the hidden externality there is Ethereum's overall economic security, and the price of ETH is potentially would potentially get caught in the crossfire if Eigenlayer systemic risk came to pass. So that's another example of a parasitic protocol that is effectively impossible to stop without one approach is being discussed right now, which is enshrining these protocols and making them officially a part of the Ethereum ecosystem. For Lido, enshrining something like Lido would be turning Ethereum from proof of stake to like a delegated proof of stake, and that has its own problems. With Eigenlayer, yeah, exactly. Like you can see protocols getting taken over through some of the same governance tactics that we're talking about today. So it's all related, right? These are all the common theme is incentive misalignment and resulting in what are called economic exploits or vulnerabilities.
Yeah. The fact is, if you can do something sketchy and you're behaved handsomely for doing something sketchy, you will do something sketchy.
Exactly, or someone will, right? Because if it's not someone, if it's not one of us, if it's not a white hat, it's going to be a black hat. It's going to be North Korea. If you believe that the Lazarus Group is actually North Korea, whole nother topic. But they're the ones that get blamed for half of the exploits in crypto. The point stands that if an attack can happen, it will happen. And so better to build your systems, this is a whole nother tangent of code is law, but better to build your systems, in my opinion, to account for that kind of thing than to be left with your pants down, and like every time an attack happens that was theoretically preventable. Because over the long term, what you can expect from a fully free market system is self-correction. And my firm belief, and I think yours as well, is that the free market eventually resolves the problems that it creates. And so to have a free market in crypto looks a lot like the philosophy of code is law and letting exploits happen so that we can learn from them and then weed out those kinds of exploits in the future by developing better protocols.
Yeah, crypto's an interesting mix of code is law and the inability to code out people. People exist, people do decisions. Ultimately, like that's where the incentive structures come into it. That's the law of people, sort of. The code is the law of code, but then the incentives are the law of people. That kind of govern how the people act in the system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, I guess the way that I've started to put it is code is law and incentives lead to the enforcement of that law. And in a sense, I tweeted earlier this week, code is law, interpretation, and enforcement, because all three of those things are hard coded. And the EVM, for example, the Ethereum virtual machine, will you write the code in Solidity or Viper, and then the EVM interprets it, and then the code executes how it's going to execute. It's deterministic, right? It does what it does. But the interaction with those kinds of things is dictated through economic incentives, which are like really almost impossible to route around. Like we've seen the failures of central planning in the history of 20th century monetary policy, but for some reason, detractors of the code is law philosophy think that central planning is somehow going to solve things, or preventing, trying to legislate that crypto exploits are illegal is going to prevent them. I think that's a silly position, but I think there are counter arguments to code is law that are, like using a social layer to to have people choosing which part of the an alleged exploit, which feature the protocol should have. I think that's a decent way to address some of these things, but it's a whole nother topic.
Of course. And a few shows ago, I did address that New York, issued an arrest warrant for someone for doing what was it called, MEV stuff. And yeah, that's a whole can of worms for there. Let's hit on the lightning round stuff, no pun intended. So CoinGate posted, and CoinGate is one of the most major crypto payment processors out there, especially for European companies. I think they're out of Lithuania. But they said, let's talk about blockchain use as a payment method. They showed this pie chart, right, that says Bitcoin is number 2 as far as most popular number of payments at 21.5% of payments were with Bitcoin. 32.0% used the Tron network. Now, most of those were USDT on Tron, not Tron itself. And Litecoin is 14.3%, so catching up pretty well there. And then BSC 11, ETH 11, others, whatever. And so I shared this, and basically said, so basically we're trying to see about like what are people using to pay. Largely, crypto processors or people are largely have Bitcoin and use Bitcoin, except for like the whole DeFi world or whatever, because Bitcoin's incompatible with that, so they obviously don't do it. But as far as these things, BitPay Litecoin has almost double the number of payments per month going through BitPay as Bitcoin, for example. And that's been the case for like the last year or so. It's really Flippened there. It's like, okay, well, that's just BitPay. That's mostly the US. It's like, whatever. And then now we have CoinGate, which is another very major processor. I would say between the two of these, if you throw in now payments as well, that's like 80% of the crypto payment processor market, probably. Just off the top of my head, I haven't run the numbers, right? But so basically, this is a second place where Bitcoin is being left in the dust as far as a payment option. And I also pointed out a few other stats. So obviously the BitPay stats, and then BitRefill. This was last year. I mean, I don't really have super up-to-date data, but Bitcoin was still the majority of their payments, but a slim majority with ETH and Tether on Tron, all this other stuff kind of catching up in there. And then like Solana's been obviously has a million different transactions and stuff. Like the whole ecosystem as far as raw transactions are doing huge. And then as far as what people will pay to send, the crypto fees thing, Bitcoin's been number 2 or less for a very long time. So Bitcoin is still very comfortable, I would say, in its number 1 market cap position. And it's actually gotten more comfortable since 2017, because 2017 is when Ethereum came dangerously close to flipping. And then since then, ETH has its own issues or whatever. The space has continued to grow. The dominance factor is like somewhere around 50% right now for Bitcoin. The rest of the space is catching up, but as far as one big competitor, Bitcoin still is, as far as like nothing else is close to the Bitcoin in market cap right now. But it's losing the payments war. The last couple of years, you started to see it, really see it. Not just, use Bitcoin Cashes and then no one uses it. Like, no, this is like real data now. So,
yeah.
I don't know if there's too much to say on that, but I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, interesting to see Litecoin getting so much adoption. I remember a while ago looking into this and seeing that Litecoin was predominantly used in darknet markets in Eastern Europe. And I don't know why. I don't really know why that would be a thing. I'd love to hear an explanation if any of the viewers have insights into that. I think one of those reasons might be the Mimblewimble implementation that they've got. The ability to add a little bit of privacy, but not a substantial amount of privacy to Litecoin that way. The other way, though, and I would love to see the stats on this, is Litecoin has atomic swaps with Monero, and Monero has pretty strong privacy. So, it would make sense that maybe Litecoin is used as an intermediary to Monero on darknet markets, and for that reason is being used for gift cards and all sorts of other things that they might be buying with cryptocurrency.
Yeah, there's a lot of no one the hell knows on this whole thing. I do think Monero has, I would probably say off the top of my head, just from what I've seen a couple people report, Monero has taken a significant portion of the darknet stuff, which in my
Yeah.
opinion was always very minor in terms of volume, as the grand scheme of things. It's almost like a footnote, right? But as far as it, and then a lot of the, pay with Bitcoin type people from the 2014, 15, 16 kind of era, those people tend to be like more migrating to Monero, like the hard, like I've seen a lot of like, it's like the next stop for maxis, right? For maxis who get forced out, they just the
Yeah.
next one. Litecoin is a different, is I think Litecoin's a much more simplistic story than we'd like to think, which is people who wanted to pay with Bitcoin, and it's clunky and expensive, and it's hard to do. They just have some Litecoin, or they just sell some and buy some Litecoin and then use that instead. And it's
Yeah,
like silver
it
to
could
gold,
be.
right? I mean,
Right.
it turns out to be that. I think that's what's happening. I would like to see the darknet market, if there's any data on Litecoin there. I've never heard Litecoin mentioned in a modern context in that, but MWeb is pretty good privacy, all things considered. Like the exploits you'd have to do to be able to set up some sniffer nodes and other things like that, considering people are still using Bitcoin on darknet markets, and Bitcoin is more surveilled than ever. I'm not saying that Bitcoin is less private than ever. It's about the same as it's always been. I mean, worse after Samurai and Whirlpool and all them went away. But as far as, it's very watched now. Like, I don't know if anyone's watching like Verge, right? Like no one's freaking watch. Like you could and like for example, Nano, super transparent.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's watching Nano. So you could listen. Not criminal advice. Nothing is criminal advice. But I think if you did all kinds of crazy nonsense on Nano, no one would know, because the Nano
Right.
people are watching the blockchain and maybe an exchange or two. Like no one's.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Bitcoin, BTC, everyone's watching it.
Yeah.
I would think it's more likely that people would MWeb Litecoin to buy sketchy things and just bridge out, peg out to cash out, because Litecoin is still viewed as like very legit, sort of. And almost, I think one, maybe two exchanges in South Korea did end up delisting after MWeb got added, but most of the world just is clueless that it exists. So whereas if you have the taint of Monero on you, if you have any kind of like this was a swap from, that puts on like criminal flags and stuff, as far as like the powers that be are concerned. That's their flag to look into this stuff. So that's just
Yeah.
my I guess response to that.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah, and on the other side, the real clear winner. I mean, these are just little things popping up here and there. The clear winner is more specifically Tether on Tron, but very much stable coins. People
Yeah.
want to use Bitcoin. He couldn't, and then the next thing, rather than, well, let me do the new Bitcoin, like that did not work out. And that, no offense to all my Bcash buddies out there, I don't think that that's the way things are going to go. I could be very wrong, and I'd actually like to be wrong in that case. But I think mostly people are just moving to crypto as a stable coin rail until you start to see serious censorship of stable coins, which is already possible with a lot of them. But until you start to see wide scale like legal crackdowns, or just pressure to like KYC, if like, oh, you can't use USDC, on to swap this for that. And when you start to see those things, then you're going to see non-stable coins become popular for payments again, but not until then, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe spicy take, but I don't
Nice.
know if that's ever going to happen because it's not really in the U.S.'s interest to criminalize use of their own currency. Like in a way, the particularly the backed stable coins, they actually expand the American empire, where you can argue that some of the algorithmic stablecoins don't because they're accruing value to crypto. The backed stablecoins, where Tether and Circle hold 1-to-1 of USDC or buy treasuries, those are actually increasing the value of the US dollar because they're backing it with the underlying. So I'm not sure that cryptocurrencies will become popular for payment outside of Monero on the dark web for until the dollar collapses or starts to show signs.
Yeah, or until people, um, until there's some annoyances with paying with stable coins, because right now they help. I think that the dollar, like the money printer won't stop going burr, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially since people, if there's a strategic reserve, which let's just cap off of that thing, uh, then printing money to buy Bitcoin is basically just like getting free Bitcoin. And if the government does that,
Yeah.
it might cause an acceleration of the devaluation of the dollar.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That would be insane. We talked before the show about the Trump hinting at
Yeah,
buying,
let's cap it
paying
off
off.
with that one for sure.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right,
Um,
I'll put it up
yeah,
on
go
the
for it.
screen while you're chatting about it. It says break. First off, I love that you coded degen news, which at degenerate news, like of course, Anyway, breaking. Donald Trump says, he says maybe we'll pay off our $35 trillion debt by handing him a little crypto check, handing him a little Bitcoin. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, could be Trump talking shit. Could be legit. Would be. I mean, of all the end games for Bitcoin, like being used to pay off the U.S. national debt and then ditched afterward, might be the funniest outcome. China as exit liquidity. I think all of us had in mind the U.S. as exit liquidity. Once well, I mean, you and I had Bitcoin as peer-to-peer electronic cash, but Saifedean and some of the other Bitcoin maxis had the U.S. government as the ultimate exit liquidity. But dumping on China to pay off the national debt would be among the funniest outcomes.
Yeah, but does China even want it like directly, or would it be, you know,
Well, I mean,
selling it?
how I imagine that playing out is like U.S. announces Bitcoin is the new global reserve currency, and it's buying however much, and it's already bought. Let's say they're buying half a million Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
and they already have 200,000, or they already have half of it. The rest of the countries are going to start to follow, and I think there'd be a scramble to purchase a lot of Bitcoin, and at the end of that, the dollar might still be valuable. I don't, unless they're printing in order to acquire this, which would
Mm-hmm.
sort of, I think, would only happen if they were one of the last buyers. They will have a bunch of Bitcoin to sell, and they could conceivably sell it for, the U.S. dollars required to pay off all of the national debt.
Yeah, I mean,
That would be,
what is the
yeah.
debt like denominated in anyway? It's,
Well, yeah, it's denominated in dollars, and that's the whole
so if
the
they
whole
got a lot
problem.
of keep buying Bitcoin with printed money, then it's like I don't know what the technical term of what kind of attack that is, but you just completely the value of what you owe goes way down or not or down, and then you have this like scarce asset that the value goes up, and then all of a sudden you're like, we're gonna sell a tenth of our Bitcoin to pay off the national debt, and then and just
Right.
like screw China out of like like you know
Yeah, I mean, and then run back the entire history of monetary policy since the Fed. I mean, this was
can
when I
you
saw the
imagine
Bitcoin.
can you
Yeah,
imagine lending in a significant amount to someone denominated in something that the person you're lending to has direct control over.
Right.
Like you're just saying like, look, I'll lend you money payable back in your car. And then they're like, okay, great. And then they just like start like selling the radiator and stuff like that, and just like all kinds of sketchy stuff. Like, here you go, here's your car back. Like how naive would you have to be? But
Right.
yeah, a lot of crazy game
Yeah.
theory stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's what they've done with the dollar Ponzi, right? It makes me think that that we're all actually pretty stupid, that
Yeah,
these kinds of schemes work on us. And I think it seems likely to me that around the year 2071, that we might be looking at fractional not fractional reserve at taking the new dollar off of the Bitcoin standard and ending up in 21, 24, the same place that we are now. I mean, I feel like when I saw the Bitcoin standard, I was like, the book, I was like, okay, that's where we're headed. It's gonna be a new currency that is backed by Bitcoin instead of gold, and they're going to debase it, and we're going to end up with the same problem in 100 years. And so far, that seems to be playing out. This would be the next logical step, and I think, unfortunately, that's not only like it's not only a strong possibility. That's what Bitcoin maximalists these days are advocating for. Is
yeah,
like,
which is
please,
wild.
U.S. government, buy our bags. And we
Yeah,
see it with Trump making campaign promises, with RFK making campaign promises to build a strategic reserve of Bitcoin.
theft pumped vags. Damn.
Yeah, yeah, it's a shame, but it seems to be. I used to not want to even profit on that. I used to not want to, like, be in the green for that kind of trade. But it's like, if that's what's going to happen, you might as well. Can't beat him, join him, kind of
You
thing.
might as well, bet on that. Well, it seems like a great. I just checked the time, and holy shit, it's still o'clock. So let's switch. Oops, wrong thing. Anyway, follow Mr. Nate here at official ESC on the platform formerly known as Twitter, also known as X, and then go to tokendynamics.xyz
Yep.
and throw this guy a bag to tell you why your DAO is going to collapse. 'Cause he'll tell you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we prevent all kinds of economic exploits in design. So we have an economic security assessment that we provide for protocols, and we're stress testing the design rather than the code. So if you need that, let me know. And if you are interested in these kinds of economic exploits, reach out to me, because we're looking for more people that are interested in being economic security assessors that are looking at these protocols. And we'd love contributions to the GitHub repo and the other documents that we're building in-house to help find these things and prevent them. So that's my shill is, if you're interested in economic security, just ping me on Twitter. My DMs are open.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, everyone, thanks for watching. Happy Friday. Hope you have a good one. Don't cry if you're a Kujiran. It's all going to be okay. Daddy JP is going to bail you out. Everything's going to be all right. Wag me. Don't degen too long. Make sure you keep your risk mitigated. Understand your risk, mitigate it, pay your food bills, etc. Make sure you don't get wrecked. Too bad. All right. See you guys next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.